The roots of the modern interpretation of Santa Claus are often traced back to the mid-19th century poem A Visit from St. Nicholas by Clement Moore. Though the poem has been attributed to others, let's leave that argument for another time. Our concern here is with the words of the poem more so than who wrote it. It is from this poem that the modern Christmas, in regards to Santa Claus, takes most of its images. The poem gives us a vivid description of Santa, including clothing, weight, etc. It talks about a team of reindeer that each have a name, and the exact number of reindeer, and the fact that Santa travels by a sleigh. It even depicts the precise night of his arrival. Over the years, the images of this poem have become canon in Christmas lore. Even though the poem only dates to 1823, it has been said that each of these items are part of a tradition. It is curious that even in this tradition, the poem has suffered from selective interpretation. People only adhere to the obvious items and ignore a greater, more important visual that is the foundation upon which this poem was written. Society has taken the obvious images and made Santa a human being, thus creating a multitude of problems in explaining his existence to children, while all along ignoring the fact that the poem, at its very core, describes Santa as a supernatural entity. Most of the depictions of Santa post-1823 were all pseudo-based on Moore's description. Moore and Thomas Nast collaborated on a caricature of Santa around the same time the poem was released. It is said to be the first modern visual interpretation of Santa Claus. Further, starting in 1906, Santa appears in advertising with his long beard, red suit, black boots, and hauling a bag of toys. These first visual images were then built upon to flesh out this portrait of Santa. In 1927, the New York Times again described Santa in words almost identical to Moore, except they too leave out the most important parts of the description. They follow upon the false premise that Santa is a human being. All modern images show Santa as a massive, towering figure, larger than life. However, the original description by Moore is that of a diminutive figure. Taken from the original text, Santa is said to be a little old driver, so lively and quick. This does not sound like the mountain of a man we have come to know as Santa Claus. How about the line, "Down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound"? Magical or not, this act would be far easier if Santa was a smaller being. As the poem proceeds, we get the physical description of Santa's eyes, cheeks, nose, smile, belly, and, even though it has been all but written out by the politically correct crowd, the fact that Santa smokes a pipe. Finally, we get the clincher. Clear as day, Santa is said to be a right jolly old elf. Moore specifically chose that word, elf, a known mystical entity. Is this just a narrative tool designed to plant a picture in your mind, or is this exactly what Moore meant to portray when he created Santa Claus? Before claiming that this interpretation is too literal, one should look at the other clues that this interpretation is exactly what Moore was trying to convey. The 16th line of the poem gives two examples. First is the characterization of a miniature sleigh, followed immediately by those icons of Santa Claus lore, his famous 8 tiny reindeer. Why use such specific identifying traits over and over again? The only explanation is that Moore knew exactly what he was doing. He was delineating between Santa and human beings by creating a clear, unhindered image of a preternatural character. The conclusion is that Santa was never supposed to be regarded as a human being. So now we have an example of Santa as an enigmatic entity. No longer is he just some guy in a red and white suit, or green and white if you'd like to go a little further back. He is a diminutive figure, perhaps a descendant of the wee fairy folk. It is no coincidence that elves originate in Germanic and Norse mythos. They are divine beings who possess magic and mystery. In every tradition, Santa is surrounded by these humble helpers who make Christmas possible. It is time we saw Santa as one among many, as an elf among elves, rather than a man set apart from the crowd. Certainly, Santa Claus is an evolutionary icon that transcends any one depiction. who or what he is has morphed over the centuries. He has evolved from St. Nicholas to Santa Claus to Father Christmas to plain old Santa Claus. It is important to remember that when looking at folklore, one should not just pick and choose what they want to see. The entirety of the image should be considered, especially when espousing an item as source material. In this examination of Moore's work, as in so many others surrounding Christmas, it is the esoteric and paranormal that reign supreme. In other words, it can all be summed up simply as the magic of Christmas.